Okay, terrific. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight in person and on Zoom. I guess before we do anything else, we should approve the minutes from last month's meetings. They were distributed and people got a chance to take a look. So I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Excellent. We'll start with you, Gracie.
Yes, approve.
Yes.
I wasn't here last month. Yes.
All right, they are approved. And we will go right into our continuations. The first one is 9 Meadowbrook Road. Do we have anybody on that one?
If you're here to represent the applicant of the application, can you please hit the raise hand button on the screen?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. 9 Meadowbrook is seeking an extension on its application that was approved on March 23rd of last year for the provisions of section 224-51-C-1. They're seeking an extension because they've switched architects from Ferguson Malone to Hopkins Architect. And there were delays because of that transition. So we're seeking a 6-month extension for the already approved variant that was provided.
And who are you?
I'm Brian Hopkins.
So you are the new architect.
I am the new architect, yes.
Any differences between what we approved last year and what you're going forward with?
There have
Or would
been
like-
absolutely no changes to the application
Absolutely.
since it was approved.
Okay, so it's,
Although his letter does say there's been no significant change.
yeah, that's why I was curious.
Yeah, so there have been some interior changes, but nothing that as it applies to zoning or the variance.
Gotcha. Okay, super. Alrighty, so this is purely an extension of something that we approved last March.
Yes, ma'am.
Alrighty, well then yes.
There is a neighbor that has
Oh.
their hand raised.
So, okay, let's have it.
Yeah, hi there. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
My name is Arthur Shaban. I am a neighbor at 11 Meadowbrook. And of course, I completely support the application, so I'm not bringing up any objections. I just want to reiterate something that had come up at the planning board. So this may not be exactly the right forum for my comments, but we were concerned, and it came up at the planning board, that a new berm that is being built to raise my neighbor's driveway slopes into my property, toward my property. And I understood from speaking to Ed Marin that certain mitigations were put in place, a berm of some sort. And when I looked at the site plan, I didn't see that executed. So I just want to establish, I guess, for the record, that this is a concern of ours, and I want to make sure that it's addressed.
Yeah, that is more of a planning board issue than a zoning board issue.
Yeah.
I guess the only direction that I could give you is you could ask your neighbor, of course, but also you could look at the letters that were sent out from the planning board and see if there's anything about it in there, and also to look at the plans as approved.
Mhm.
And they might give you some indication. And you could call Ed, I
Okay.
would also give Ed a call, but I appreciate your comments, but that's just not something that we make any decisions on, and wouldn't be anything we particularly looked at.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, but at least now the new architect is aware of my concerns, and he can address it. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Nope, thank you. Anything else? Any questions? Okay, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Now, they're asking for a 6 month. Do we grant
We
6
don't
months?
grant 6 months. I mean,
Right, it's a year.
it'll be a year.
It's a year.
So
That's even, I'll take a year. Thank you.
yes, okay, yes, it'll be a 1-year extension.
Right.
Just because Charlie's right, that's what we do. We
Right.
just do year increments. So I will make that motion.
Second.
Second, and we'll start with you, Charlie.
Yes.
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 Okay, you are approved. I will send you a letter by the end of the week.
See you next year.
Yeah.
I really hope not. Otherwise, you'll be talking to a different architect.
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
boy.
So let's hope we don't.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay, good night. Thank you. The next case, moving right along, is Cooper. It's for Oak Street. That is another continuance. I know the property owner is here, but do we have anybody online who is going to be presenting?
Yes.
Okay. Super.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we
All
can.
right,
Thank you.
terrific. And staff as well. Good evening. Brad Schwartz from Zarin and Steinmetz, a law firm representing Danielle and Josh Cooper for Oak Street. This is an application for area variances to construct a 1.5-story addition that would allow the Coopers to enjoy a first floor bathroom, mudroom, and some improvements to their kitchen and closet space. We made a pretty comprehensive submission on March 11th. Hopefully you all had a chance to read it. We went through a pretty detailed overview of the project, including how the project has evolved over time, including reductions in scale. We addressed the 5-factor test, as well as the concerns raised by the neighbors and the ZBA. And for all the reasons that we addressed in our letter, we maintain that this addition would not change the fabric of the community, nor would it result in a detriment to the immediate neighbor. We did acknowledge, yes, views may change some, but not in a way that would be inconsistent with views that one could expect in a densely developed neighborhood. We thank all of you who came out to the site since the last meeting. We look forward to your feedback this evening. We do have a deck that John prepared to walk you through. Just to preview it quickly, we're going to start with photos of the home that show the existing tight spaces in the home that are really the driving force behind this application and the request for some additional space. And then John has some slides that will address, again, some of the concerns that have been stated throughout the application. So John, I turn it over to you to begin the slide deck.
Okay, John Malone, Ferguson Malone Architecture. So I'll share screen now, I'll show you what we have. So as Brad said, we wanted to start with just a review of some of the interior conditions for people who may not have had an opportunity to see come out to the site and see the interior. So you'll see one of the things we talked about at the last meeting is there is no mudroom or closet space on the ground floor as you enter. This is just showing you what the solution was for the closet. It basically cut out part of the dining room in order to provide a closet at the ground floor as you enter. There's not any kind of entry space. You enter right into the living room. That's something that we discussed last week. This is a few pictures of the kitchen. You'll see the kitchen has access from 3 sides, so it's very kind of tight condition. It's really a sort of a hall space. It's also a kitchen. I just want to say one of the other driving factors was getting a ground floor powder room. This is the stair, and in the house there's an elderly parent that can't access the stair and therefore can't visit because they don't have a downstairs bathroom. So this is just an understanding of the stair, which is relatively complicated. And then expansion to the primary suite. This is sort of the size of the primary suite right now. You'll see it's very, very tight in that room. And if you hadn't gone up to see it, the bathroom is a closet-sized bathroom right here. So there's not a lot of extra space in that. One of the things that was taken out of the project as part of its reduction was the expansion of the primary suite to add closets to this room and to expand the bathroom. The other thing that we had permitted, if we go from this point, what we had submitted it for since the last meeting was some drawings further explaining the differences between the proposed project and the 2004 project and our initial proposal to the planning board. So this diagram that we sent shows both the plan condition that shows the difference between the 2004 project and what's being proposed, and then some elevation or sort of elevation diagrams to show the difference in the height and the volume associated with the 2004 proposal and what we're proposing. There's a dotted line here that shows the reduction that we've pursued since the original submission to the planning board. So you see originally the ridge height was at 21'4", and then it was dropped to 17'11". So we also included a chart here that showed the various heights of the proposal, the initial proposal, our current proposal, and then also the project in 2004 that was a touchstone for the neighbor when we were discussing this. And then also a comparison of the volume. So you'll see the volume of what's being proposed here is 50% of the volume of that earlier proposal. The other thing,
earlier, John, being 2004 is 50% reduction, but it was also reduced from December of 2023, the Cooper's presentation.
right, so it's about a 20% reduction. It doesn't read that way, but it is about a 20% reduction from the initial proposal. The next thing that we sent this month for the board to review is this diagram, and there was a discussion about potential sun impacts on the neighbor's property. So in this diagram, we've sort of shown a few sun angles. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to use this diagram to sort of clarify the limitations on the lot and why we ended up with the strategy we have and what we're really asking for. So what you'll see here highlighted in yellow is the side yard in the yard, and you'll see that nothing that we're proposing extends into that side yard. There is a small request for a side yard variance because there's an 18-inch wide HVAC unit here. 6 inches of it is sticking into that side yard variance. So we're not asking for a variance that is in relationship to the volume of the house in any way. This next orange mark here shows the height limitation in the area. That's a 35-foot height limitation. So you'll see we are not, the proposed addition is nowhere near, obviously, the overall height. It's about 50% of allowable height in that area. We just wanted to clarify that. So this is the front yard condition. And you'll see that our proposed addition extends into the front yard. And the reasoning behind extending the front yard is just to make this addition useful, but also this is a special lot. So it's not a typical lot, it's a corner lot that has 2 front yards. So the buildable area available is very narrow. It's very hard to make an addition or any expansion space work on that. So if you see here, you'll see that the red that is just added to this slide is the 2004 proposal and what it did in the front yard, and our proposal is much less, the extension into the front yard.
And just to point out, the front yard is, while it intrudes into the setback, it's no closer to the street than the existing home.
Right. So if we look at those limitations that we talked about, the side yard, the front yard, and the height limitation, this green area here is the actual allowable buildable area. So if we were to move forward with a project that didn't require variances, this is the area that we would be building in. And also this, the height.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
So that's just to clarify why we're doing what we're doing. It's not a very functional space. There is a project that could happen there. We don't think it's the right project.
Okay.
This here is what we're proposing in blue. So you'll see this is the extent of the variance that we're showing.
Yep.
And this is the variance relative to the other project.
Right.
So then that's just to lay out the sort of what's happening.
Helpful.
Right. And you'll see this is what Brad alluded to. The house right now is at about 11 feet from front yard, so extending into the, by almost 30, what would that be, 33%. And then our proposal, we have a small porch area that's extending to this line, and then the mass of the building is at 22.9. So then, just to go back, the reason we sent this diagram actually was to test the sun angles and the impact on the second floor windows at the house. And I just wanted to go through. So the first line that we're showing, just because I think there were some questions from the neighbors specifically about how these lines were derived. So the first line, this lower line, is the angle at which the minimum angle that the sun could potentially hit this window if there were no trees or vegetation. So this is like if you imagine the landscape completely denuded, or if the landscape was like Scotland, the sun could peek over the hill in the Irvington Woods, that area right there. That's the high point that we measured about 1.3 miles away. It could peek over, and this is the angle that it would have. That would be obviously an early morning sunrise. This second line is our analysis or our estimate of the sun angle if the trees are in place, if the vegetation is in place. And I think the Burks asked, how was this determined? It's determined by adjacent planting and stuff like that, but we did not share that at the last meeting, so we developed some additional material to, what just happened there? Sorry. Some additional material to better describe what's happening there. So this diagram here shows our project and the proposed addition. This is the house at 5 Willow. I'm sorry, it's a typo. It says 3 Willow. It's 5 Willow. That is the adjacent neighbor with the concern, and the sun angles are shown here in elevation and how they're developed. So, and you'll see over here on the other side of Oak Street, this is what's limiting the potential for sun to come in at a very low angle. And really what we're only trying to check here is obviously when the sun gets over the trees, it's going to be over the ridge of the addition. Our addition has no impact on sun once it's, so it's really, we're just analyzing the very low sun angle in the morning. So there are two lines that we're showing here. I mean, there's two original lines that we're showing here. The top line here was our estimated line, and the bottom line is the bottom line here is the denuded line, basically the topo limitation of the lowest. And this third line that we've added in the center is actually a line that we've confirmed. So it's a line that we've analyzed by experiment, and that's set the actual base level. So we went out to the site in the morning, found when the sun hit the line, and set that angle based on the time of day and the sun angle. So we know that that's the actual experimental line of the sun. So here's an aerial of the condition. This is 5 Willow here. This is where the proposed addition would be, and this is the yard to the east. So you see there's evergreen trees that are blocking sun angles there now, and then also deciduous trees. This is the condition of the window that was concerned. There were 2 windows that were concerned. This is window 3 on our diagram and window 2 on our diagram. You'll see that this window in the summer months is primarily blocked by an existing hedge, and this one is partially blocked by an evergreen hedge. And this is the area across the street that we were just looking at. In terms of the trees that are potentially blocking it, there's evergreen trees that cast a shadow on the building now as the sun rises. And then this is the dogwood that could potentially cast a shadow on that area. So here's the line that we were first showing. So this first one is the estimate that we gave. I can go quickly through these. The second line here is the topo line. And this last line here is the one that we confirmed on the morning sun angle. So it's basically at 7:51. That's what would happen. You'll see there's a small potential block there. We think that's a de minimis impact. It probably accounts for maybe about 8 or 9 minutes in the morning before the sun would get over that line.
No, doesn't the sun change dramatically over the course of the year, the way it hits the property?
It does. So what we're analyzing here is the lowest potential sun angles. So In the winter time, that would be at a different time of day, but there's still like basically a bottom limit to the potential sun angle that could hit the building. So it happens at a different time of day, winter, but it's not like in summertime the sun is going to hit this angle earlier in the day, and in the wintertime later in the day.
Also in wintertime, the sun usually is in the southern sky, so it may not even hit the window.
Yeah, that's why we were really focused on this area here, directly to the east, because as soon as and most of the time the sun is this small addition doesn't have any impact relative to everything else that's happening. Trees, the height of the sun and stuff. This is just really only applies at the lowest sun angles right at sunrise.
Great. Any questions for John? Is there anybody online who would like to be heard?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. All right, anybody? No, we're good.
No, man.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna make a motion to approve. I got the chance to go out to both properties, both Willow Street and Oak Street, inside and out. And I think when you weigh the benefit to the homeowners as opposed to whatever effect there's gonna be on the neighbors, I didn't see a huge effect negatively on their property, but I saw that it would be a big benefit to Oak Street to be able to do this, to be able to put in a bathroom downstairs, plus a slightly bigger kitchen, a better entryway. All in all, on the balance test, I think this gets my approval. So that's what I will move if I have a second.
Second.
I just want to comment, I also think that you've done a good job in really making the improvements de minimis to improve
Yes.
the life and your home style, and without going overboard as some people tend to do. So that's an important consideration, and I do approve it also.
Great. So Rosie? Me as well. So I'm a yes, you're a yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So you are approved, and I will send you a letter by the end of the week.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. All right, so the last thing on the agenda tonight is 37 Maple Street. A lot of action over in that part of town. And that's Markham.
On action.
Good evening, board members. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay, great. If I may, I'm sharing my screen, and I think you are correct in that there has been some action over at 37 Maple.
Right, but you're not sharing the screen.
Oh,
Yeah, we're not seeing anything yet.
There we go.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you.
great. All right, that was just a test. Let me go here. Yeah, to summarize the activity that's going on at Maple, just make the board fully aware, although you might know already. We have a kind of a second stage proposal in front of the board, including the planning board. We were in front of the planning board for several months, perhaps 3 or 4 meetings, in an attempt to include the very small addition that we were fortunate enough to get fully approved by the planning, zoning, and architectural review boards. But phase 2 was always applied for initially as part of phase 1. And at the suggestion of the planning board, they split the application, or suggested that we split the application into kind of dividing out the garage at the rear of the property that we were always seeking to add to. So what?
Were you come before us for phase 1?
Yeah. So
You did.
2 or 3 months ago, we had a very small coverage variance that was needed for phase 1. It's the small addition that was on the south side of the property. Maybe I could zoom in here.
Got it.
And yeah, so it was this section right here. If you
Yeah.
can see my cursor kind of moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And including overall coverages as per village code with, let's say, retaining walls, window wells, air conditioning pads, were all properly calculated, and we were slightly over the coverage allowance. We actually reduced the coverage between what was existing and our last meeting in front of the zoning board. But what we had pursued for perhaps 2 or 3 of the initial planning board meetings was a renovation and addition to the existing single car garage that existed at the back of the property. Now, to show the board here, the existing garage is a 1-car garage that exists in the rear left corner, which is the kind of northeast corner of what is an oversized lot for Maple Street. Now, what we do propose, and in front of the board this evening, is a proposed 2-car garage that is relocated. And this was a lot of work involved in making sure that our neighbor to the rear was satisfied and actually had no objection to this solution. The previous solutions where we were adding a second bay to the existing garage in the same northeast corner was an objection raised and concerns raised by the neighbor at our rear at Willow Street. And so taking that into consideration and trying to find a solution that was better basically for all, we came up with this solution. Now, this solution still requires technically 3 variances, one of which is a rear setback variance, but the existing garage is 1 foot away from the rear setback, and we're increasing that to 3 feet, actually 3.1. So we're helping or lessening the variance that was already in place. The second variance is regarding the driveway.
Hold on a second,
Yep.
excuse me. It probably wasn't a variance because that garage probably predates
Right.
the zoning ordinances. So I don't think that was a variance on the 1-foot garage, do you?
Okay, yeah, understood, and agreed. But let's say we're lessening the effect.
Another question, what's the height of the
Yep.
existing garage? What's the height of the proposed garage?
They are the same height. So what we did is we peaked into the middle, a double hip to the main garage. I could look at the chart here. I believe it's here. I believe they come in. Oh, it's on the elevations. Okay, sorry. I think they're right around. Oh, let's go down to the. Let me help generate this here. Oh, I don't see it. Oh, I see it marked over here. Yeah, so you can actually see in our rear elevation, here is the height of the existing garage, and we've extended that line and created the new garage at the exact same height. So we're not increasing the height at all. And from the east side, it's actually buried.
You'll agree that the mass of the height is probably 2 times larger than the existing garage, correct?
No, not with a hip roof, because remember, this is a gable roof facing our neighbor at 28 Willow. And when we were attempting to bring, not an increase in height, but bring this gable across farther, the neighbor had a bit of an objection stating that they didn't want to look at like more of a wall. Now, what we've done is you can see that the neighbor's property actually ends here. We've placed this new 2-car proposed garage so inbound and hidden, both from the other neighbors on Maple and from our neighbor at 28 Willow, that it's not actually a mass that really would get appreciated other than from the elementary school property, which is quite vast and a big green space over here, the path of which is still perhaps around 80 feet away from this garage. Also, the garage contains a lot of screening that's both existing and proposed on the property. So mass-wise, I would argue that it's actually less. It doesn't have any effect on anyone, especially the neighbor to the rear of 28 Willow, who did have objections as stated, and we're actually lessening the effect on them And they were kind enough to send an email to the planning board stating they would have no objection to this proposal, although they did, and rightfully so, had concerns about our previous proposal.
Is it fair to say that a modern car will not fit into the existing garage?
Correct, yes. And that was the start of where our concern was. And if I'll just bring one photo here. You can see that the interior width in this garage is about 8'3". Now, I think most cars are almost 7 feet now, plus door mirrors. But getting in and out of a car or pulling in a car into this garage would be super problematic. Now, even this photo here, we can state that the property line is well over here, and we would barely start to see at this point our new 2-car proposed garage, and it would be tucked into the property as such to allow for a successful double turning radius so that both cars can reverse out of the garage and come down the driveway face forward. And we think that's a huge benefit to the neighborhood on Maple, because we're taking effectively 2 cars that, although could park in a driveway, can't park tandem because you can never get out. But we're taking 2 cars off the street, and we think that's a huge benefit. The other benefit is, if we kind of go back to this picture, I guess it explains it. This is our neighbor that had concerns about like an increased width in mass across the back of the property. And granted, it was proposed initially to be 1 foot away. Bringing it 3 feet away and really only commencing where the school property exists, it takes, and actually we remove this away from their views and vistas down towards a more open field from their property. In addition, the garage will not be visible from Maple. If you pull up to the end of Maple, there's actually a fire hydrant there that can be quite problematic with cars parking there. I've seen several myself. I haven't done it. That I think is a huge benefit to the neighborhood in general. And it's not that we take this lightly that we're asking for a 2-car garage. But if we turn immediately on it on Maple, the first house to the right is technically an address on Station Road, but this is on Maple. This is maybe 22 feet from the property line, and it's the first thing you see as you make a right on Maple. In addition to that, we go a little farther up Maple towards our property, which is at the end of the street, although not a large street, and we see another 2-car garage, and that's number 3 Maple. In addition, we have 11 Willow Street, which is actually accessed, I think, from the rear of Willow Street, but that's another 2-car garage. So, and we've actually got a little prepared map here for the board. I just kind of pull this one over. Maybe I'll make this a little bigger. Oh, not cooperating with me right now. Hold on, let me see if I could drag it bigger first and bring it over. There we go. So here is 37 Maple. And here is the proposed garage, more in the center of the property, located farther south than the existing garage, which is visible from Maple. So when you're taking the path around the school, you'll be about out here, and then you kind of come across at an angle. And this garage will be screened with the existing vegetation and trees that are around here, including some new vegetation that we are, I think, in agreement with number 28 Maple. We're actually asking them what they prefer to see, because we'll have a small fence there, and perhaps they want to see the fence, or perhaps they want to see some kind of particular vegetation. We're fine with that. And then if we look at the area, we see there's a 2-car garage here. Here's Maple itself. And there, the introduction to Maple has a 2-car garage on the left and on the right. So we think it's...
Excuse me.
Yep.
Aren't those the same lots you just showed us 2 minutes ago? Those are the same.
Yeah. I was just showing you where they are located. Yeah. Yep.
Let me ask you, do you know whether or not any of those garages were granted a variance to be built, or do they pre-exist?
I do not know. It's that kind of research through even Greenberg GIS, Westchester GIS is not really readily available.
Next question.
Yes.
Why 2-car? Why wouldn't a one-car garage or one just a little oversized be sufficient?
Well, what we have is we have a family that have a couple of young children, one of which does have some special needs, and we are in the need for a full-time live-in au pair or home help. So what we have there is immediately a car that is generated in addition to the nucleus family of 2 cars. So we have 3, and we looked at the end of Maple, and I suggested that we try and find some kind of parking resolution or garage resolution. But because that garage is buried 4 feet or half its height almost at the rear or east of the property, and buried about 3 feet, 3.5 feet to the south of the property, and barely visible from any neighbors or anyone walking by, we all agreed that if possible, if granted by this board, we would love to get a 2-car garage like is, available in the neighborhood.
That goes
We
to
don't.
coverage. I'm talking about coverage, right? Whether you see it or not, it's not the issue. It's the coverage issue. And if you only had a 1-car garage or even a slightly oversized garage, wouldn't you bring down the variance that you need from us? If you need one at all?
Well, coverage is a weird thing in the village of Irvington, as you probably know. You could have much of the area asphalt, and call it a driveway or make it a driveway, and it doesn't count for coverage, which is an odd rule. But not to get too involved, if we look at 14.
Sorry, but that's a rule that's benefiting you quite a bit as well. Right?
No, I disagree. We're using, and we have a car model here to show the board that we're using the area as a turnaround to successfully go front forwards, which I think is of great safety benefit to both the occupants here and to the neighborhood, that we're not reversing down a driveway, which is what many of the other properties have to do. They're reversing out onto a street, which has 2-way traffic and pedestrians with sidewalks on both sides. So
Don't you have that whether you have a 1-car garage or a 2-car garage there?
it may be an argument to be, not a rule that breaks the 1 or 2 car, but the 2 car allows us to bring more cars up here. I don't think that it's ever visible, and you can see how quite centered it is on the property, that it would ever be of concern. And just going back to the coverage conversation, although we are asking for, I think, 31.2, percent, or 31.4% in total, we have 4 of the neighboring 14 properties above that number. We also have many of the properties at 28 to 31%. And in fact, when we average this total, we average right at 30%, and we're asking for 31.4. We are on an oversized lot, but then you would argue, where's the nearest oversized lot and what is their coverage? Okay, it's property H over here. And if we go to the chart, property H, which is the nearest comparable in terms of an oversized lot, has 30.6%. We are asking for 31.4, which we think is fair.
Those are likely overages that occurred because the homes are 100 years old there, pre-existing, had nothing to do with variances. It's not as if we granted variances routinely to allow those homes to exceed by 30%. But here you're asking us to do that when we have the opportunity to say, dial it back a little bit.
Well, I think the opportunity too, though, is to just allow this to be in the fabric of the neighborhood and kind of blend in to what that neighborhood is, with the huge benefit of this garage being totally hidden from view. You can walk by the street, you will not see it. Our neighbor at the rear, the most concerned initially, and granted, had some good concerns, is satisfied with this solution. And this solution has been worked on, aggressively in combination with the neighbor, allowing them to see some drawings and things, and hoping that they were okay with this. I believe that it doesn't overmass the site. It's just not visible because it's so buried from almost every direction.
So tell me about, so you need coverage, right? That's one of the That's one of the variances you're asking for. The other is what, rear yard setback?
Yeah,
Or is
yeah,
it-
we would like to take the rear yard to 3.1 feet. It's currently 1 foot. And that would enable like proper maintenance of the back of the garage so that it could be, painted and maintained as needed. But also benefits, I think, even though it's only the school property where the school have a mesh wire fence, keeping 3 feet away from there, I think is smart. And bringing it into the center of the lot, being that it's a larger lot, is actually, fine with us.
And what about the third variance?
Yeah, the third is a driveway. So the driveway currently goes up. Let me just see if I can pull this one. Yeah, the driveway is the property line, effectively. Here's the neighbor to our north, and here is the property. And of course, this is the garage that we propose removing. Our garage would be proposed around the corner, but yet as soon as we get to this point here, we propose bringing the driveway in about 1.5 feet so we can do a very small increasing height retaining wall. I think it caps out around 3 or 4 feet. But at least that way we can get some screening on the upside of the retaining wall also. And that also occurs across the back of the property for the width of where we're asking for the driveway to occur.
Can you show me that chart you had again on coverage in the neighborhood and maybe like make it a little bit bigger? I just want to get a better look at that.
So I apologize to the board, but the first property cuts off. There is a 2-car garage here. Here is the other 2-car garage that exists. And then we go down, and I did the primary neighbors to the rear. Oh, here's the
Is
chart.
that there, just to get an idea of what we're talking about in terms of coverage.
Yep.
In the neighborhood.
We can see
And
there's
where-
a couple at 37, 35, 38. Now, in fairness, though, to be, closer, I feel, as a comparison to our lot size, H, which is on Maple, is pretty close at 30.6%.
So where are you right now? Because I don't see,
37 Maple doesn't appear to be.
yeah, 37 Maple isn't on the chart. So give me where you are right now in terms of coverage and where you propose to be. If you
Okay.
don't mind.
No. Let me just plus in here. So the allowable is 1,823. We have an existing of 1,920, and we would propose going to 2,395 square feet. And that, as the percentage of lot, is over the allowable by the 31.4.
So you're barely over right now. And you're looking to go to 31.4.
Yeah, well, what happens is we were actually more over prior to our previous application because we reduced from 1,977 square feet down to 1,920. So we actually came down 57 square feet in our prior application, but we needed to kind of discount, and that included the original, 1-car garage that exists. But we needed to, I was trying to, battle the coverage issue, knowing that we would attempt to, do our proposed 2-car garage in one way, shape, or form. And when we settled it with the planning board, and they liked it and actually appreciated our efforts, and took into account the neighbors' concerns, who now doesn't have an objection to this. And I'm not, suggesting it's all about, the neighbor, but 28 Willow was quite vocal initially, and now I think are quite satisfied and happy. I think it improves their views.
Where do you sit now on that chart that we saw a moment ago? Can you go back to that chart and see where you can fit us in there somewhere now? So where would you put us? Where would you put 37 up? You can blow it up a little bit for us, please.
Sure. You would think I could blow it up easily, but let's see.
You did a good job a few moments ago.
I don't know why I have to drag it over there 3 screens, I don't suggest it.
I mean, this is a
Let me
dumb
see if I
question,
can-
but I'm assuming when you say 2395, that includes taking down the existing
Correct,
garage.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
And how many feet of coverage is that, the retaining wall you're doing?
it's a good question.
The retaining wall itself, we have that on our second sheet here, which zoom out for a second. Here's the existing. And here is our proposed. So our proposed retaining wall in total is 46 square feet. And that is, you know, if the board could see my cursor here, it's basically coming across here, then coming in slightly here, and that gives the 1.5 feet also along the side, just so that we can successfully grab a regular size car. And we based this off of actually a smaller Ford Bronco, not the large Bronco, and a Kia Telluride, I believe it was, with proper turning radiuses, allowing for only 95 to 97% turning. And it works. It works great.
You see if you can find that chart for us that you we're going to blow up.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yes, and where would we land if you were to plug us in there?
So 31.4 is our number. So we'd kind of sit obviously under, 24 Willow. We'd sit kind of in the middle of the pack, although because of the very, sparse development, let's call it, of 28 Willow, our average comes out at exactly 29, well, it's 29.75 is the average of the 14 properties. So if we were to chart the 14, we would be fifth out of the most dense. But that leaves about a third that have coverages greater than what we propose.
And how did you calculate the coverage of the other properties?
Yeah, so very detailed aerial work, but in conjunction with the Greenberg GIS, they have pretty good records on most of their tax lot maps and their sketches. So we were able to both walk actually 3 streets. We did a lot of work on Willow Street, which I think went to waste. But we were able to identify where a garage was. And the neighborhood is full of single car garages, at least, where the garage was either the 168 square foot version, I think was one of them, or the 192 square foot version. And then we were able to identify any discrepancies and estimate the width of paths by counting bluestones. We did quite a detailed workup. And we're very, very confident in these numbers. And if any one of them was off by even 1%, I'd actually be shocked myself.
Right, but to get sort of back to the point Arthur was making, you didn't actually check to see if there are variances to support what the existing structures. Like, we don't know if there's variance for the other 2 car garages.
Yeah, I think
We
that's,
don't, but they are present in the neighborhood, which I think then comes to the argument of that's what the neighborhood is, whether they were approved prior or, before zoning laws. What we really thought was the big difference between us and any other of the 2 car garages is we're not facing the street and we're not 10 to 22 feet away from the property line. We are hidden, completely, not visible from. Even our neighbor at 28 Willow can view out the back of their house directly now with a more free view than they had prior with the 1 car garage with gable end. We've moved our proposed 2 car well south and hipped the roof to minimize its mass. And overall, it's really just I don't want to call it invisible to the neighborhood. When you're walking the path through the school, you will probably get a hint that there's something back there, but that's it. So the mass argument, I understand, but I think we have a very unique property and a unique situation, especially that, the east and south side are both buried to half the eave height of the garage at about 3.5 to 4 feet on the rear.
You took down the old garage, which you're gonna do, as you say, and you dialed back the 2-car garage, I'll give you even more than just the 1-car garage, where you happen to have a few more feet on the side to walk in or to store something. How close, what would that put you over? Maybe you haven't done the calculation,
Probably
but
haven't
would that bring you down to like
Yeah.
20% or would you break even maybe, or something like that?
No, I don't think the percentage would shift greatly, being that, let's call it a 22-foot deep garage. If we were to minimize it by 4 feet, that's 88 square feet. On this calculation, that would be approximately, it would bring it down to about 27 point something versus the 31.4 we're asking for, which
So
is still well over. And once again, but blends into what the neighborhood is. We'd probably be amongst the smallest 3 or 4 in the neighborhood at that point. But that really is not what we can.
You're currently 9% over approximately, and you're going to 31.4, so 250% increase in the overage.
Well, that's a yes, fair calculation, but remember, we just recently brought it down purposely, in kind of anticipation to potentially, pursue this 2-car garage at the assistance of the planning board, also by bifurcating the application into kind of 2 components.
But it's not as if you're adding, that necessary powder room on the first floor, or, you're making the living space a little bit longer. You're trying to get a 2-car garage. And that's a lot, 2-car garage, when you have, as I said, a little bit bigger 1-car garage. And let me just finish. You've got tons of space to park those other cars tucked behind the house. I mean, and I agree with you. It's a unique location. You're back. I respect all those things that you say, but it doesn't change the numbers on the coverage for a garage.
I would actually argue something here, if I may.
Of course.
The numbers would worsen if we did a 1-car garage in front of this board, particularly with regards to coverage, because when we create parking spaces in any way, shape, or form, they are considered coverage in their entirety. So going to a 1-car garage with a space next to it, I would be coming back to this board with the exact same number. I don't think it would change. Actually, it might increase, because you might consider where there's room to park a car, there's also perhaps an extra section of asphalt or pavers, and you would consider that parking. And I'm sure, the building inspector would back me up on that, anything that's considered potential parking is coverage. So the coverage number would increase, if anything. It's the bulk which would potentially decrease, but the bulk is not visible on this property.
But you've already said you can have 2 cars in the garage, another car parked with the person who lives with you. So we could also take that position that not only is it the garage, but you already have another parking spot on top of that. So you're really way over.
No, I disagree, because if we have a 2-car garage, the whole idea here is to be able to use 3 cars on a daily basis, one of which will likely remain still on Maple, like now, where 1 or 2 remain on Maple. But Maple is somewhat overburdened, particularly at the very end. And the fire hydrant is present there too. There would be no point in parking a car on the driveway blocking the other 2 cars. I don't think that's a realistic kind of analysis of what this site is.
Well, and you can turn around. Let me just ask you, when you were at 1977, right, which is when
Yes.
you began the project, what percent, somebody who's better at math than me, what does that leave us at?
9%.
I can cheat a little here.
9% now when they're at 1920.
No, that's 5%.
That's 5%. Okay, so it is 9% that you're going up from 9% to 30.
Right.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
Well, I appreciate the explanation that it sounds like you were directed to take the approach that you've taken by the planning board, but certainly speaking only for myself, but a factor in my voting to approve the prior variance was you were actually reducing coverage. And then this is sort of in the wings, and if we had considered it all as one unified proposal, I just think it sort of changes how we might have viewed that. Now, I understand that wasn't your plan. Sounds like you received that, but I don't know, I find that a little bit concerning.
agree with you, yeah.
And maybe that's something we should take up with the planning board so that we know these things in the future, if that's what's going on. But-
Right,
So
Yeah.
I still have some questions.
okay, yeah.
How many
please.
cars do they have now?
So they have 3 cars total, one of which is only used by their full-time nanny helper.
Okay, and where are those cars parked now?
They are not currently residing in this house. It's under construction for phase 1.
Right.
Oh, they are renting. I believe there's a 2-car garage at their rental. It's on the other side of Irvington. I haven't not been there.
Right, well, I'm just trying to assess the impact on Maple.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
So if they don't build a 2-car garage, how many cars will they have parked during the day? And I'm mostly concerned about during the day when the kids are going to and from school and there are buses going down the street.
In order to have free access to their helper's car, they would need 2 on Maple.
2 parking spaces on Maple.
Correct. And we would be, in this proposal, reducing that to 1 parking space on Maple.
Why do you say that? You still have the long driveway and that turnaround space. So even with the 1-car garage, think about the argument about if you park it there, it now creates more coverage. Forget that. You clearly could put 2 or 3 cars in the back.
Well, once again, I'd be asking this board for a much greater coverage, variance, because wherever you might be able to park a car in that situation, that would all be counted as coverage, and I'd probably be asking for, closer to 40%, not 31.4.
That's correct, that's come up in another case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they had 4 cars, I mean, does that
Right.
strengthen your argument because they now have 4 cars? I mean, that continues.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that question.
Right.
So,
Talking about.
I'm very concerned that we don't know how those other garages got there, whether they were pre-existing when the zoning law came in, right? And, there's a lot of houses in that neighborhood. There's sort of 3 examples of other 2-car garages. So we don't know that any of them have actually ever been approved by the ZBA. Right? And it seems to me like this is a big ask, right? And, are all the other neighbors going to say, oh, well, we need a 2-car garage too, because we have 2 cars and we can get a car off Maple Street. Like, I feel like I'm opening Pandora's box.
If I may, though, I think there's such a uniqueness to this property. I mean, forget that it's just an oversized lot at the end of the, cul-de-sac. The argument that, we're reducing what is currently an existing 1-foot rear setback, we're reducing where the driveway now can come inbound of the property to provide better screening. And, basically asking for coverage, yes, which is the increase in ask, but reducing the view of that said coverage. And I would say that that's a very unique situation that I can't think of another property after walking Oak, Willow, Maple, that could even get close to something that's so unique. And I think it's that uniqueness that perhaps would be the methodology of the thinking that would allow this board to approve this.
I also think that this would put you, towards the top, but top third or whatever of coverage. But everybody else is sort of right in the same high 20s, low 30s. I don't think somebody could come to us and say, I want a 2-car garage, because that would put them up into the fifties, frankly. You know what I mean, in terms
Yep,
of coverage, so I think it's limited. Is there anybody online who wants to be heard on this?
Well, the neighbors are on, but they don't have their hand raised.
Okay, all right, I'm just asking if they want to be heard. Any other questions? All right. I'm gonna,
So he
Yeah.
does know that, you know, it's gotta be 3-1.
right, it's gotta be 3-1,
2-2 is a loss for you.
right? It's not even a go back and try again.
Unfortunately, I understand.
a loss.
Well, you could adjourn.
You could adjourn, so yeah, I'll give you the options, I mean. A 2-2 obviously is a loss. You could adjourn for a month, come back with something that would make those of us who are really concerned about this coverage number a little bit less, or if you lose tonight, you could kind of start all over again.
I mean, I'd like to see if you, and I heard the arguments about the space creating and, you know, this and that, but on a one-car garage, again, giving even a little bit more space, what would the ask be on that, on the percentage? As you
Well,
said,
I-
I think you said if it's only 80 feet, it's like a couple of points, right? If you're only, that's something I'd like to know.
So unfortunately, I mean, I've studied this thing to death. And I would argue that any one-car garage solution that has the huge benefit to the neighbor at 28 Willow and to the residents of Maple of bringing that garage more southerly, inbound, and hidden from Maple, any solution there that is only one car will start to involve the conversation and the likely ask that our coverage will be greater. Only for parking purposes, not the actual garage itself. I'm looking to house into a garage that doesn't exceed the current height, actually has the benefit of a hipped roof. I would argue its massing is of a lesser scale than almost what is there, particularly with its effect to its closest possibly affected neighbor, which is 28 Willow, who have concurred and sent a beautiful email saying, we don't object to this. This is, you know what? They didn't say it was wonderful. They just said, this solution, we have no objection to. I thought that was a great sign, including the planning board, who were very appreciative of the change in our approach, maybe for the last 5 months, 4 meetings, perhaps. I think this is a win-win for the neighbors. And I understand the board's concern about setting a precedent. This is a unique property. And if somebody else asked me tomorrow with a more regular size lot or even an oversized lot, get us a 2-car garage. I'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not your architect, because it ain't gonna happen. This is unique and it's buried in the back. And I think that is the key, that it is both buried in grade, half its height, and buried in the back, nobody can see it.
So let me tell you where I am on this, and you'll probably get the idea of what kind of motion I'm gonna make. Although I was queasy about a 2-car garage as well, I would be inclined to grant this for a number of reasons. The first is that it really is kind of a mess on Maple in terms of cars, and how many cars are parked on Maple. I know as a kid, I used to walk to Dow's Lane that way, and it's a mess. There's a lot of cars that park on that street every day. Another couple aren't going to help. I do like the idea too of a garage where you can drive front way out. That's another problem on Maple, is people backing out of their driveways, especially when you're trying to back out between 2 cars that are closely parked on either side of your driveway. That's tough. I also think that if you look at the numbers, this is going to land this property right in line with the neighborhood. So I'm not sure how we say it would be out of character for the neighborhood when everybody else is in the high 20s, low 30s in terms of coverage. And I know we don't know which ones were granted variances or which were not, but I mean, they're there. And that's what the coverage is right now. So, and by the way, I think getting rid of that 1-car garage, as you say, is a big favor to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
any way you look at it. And we're also talking about 46 feet of a retaining wall, which I know is counted as coverage under our laws, but covered, retaining walls are often a big favor to everybody else too. So I look at them slightly differently when I think about coverage. So that's my thinking, but I don't know that you have 3 votes up here.
But if I may,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Mr. Spearman, correct?
Yes,
Sorry we made you work so hard tonight. My apologies, but you were good.
no problem. I'm sorry for keeping you guys so late.
That's okay. It's all paid for, so it's okay. So I do think, a factor in your favor is that it is in the back, out of the view of the other neighbor. I don't really buy into your argument about if you only built the 1-car garage and the other space would add to the coverage, but I'll let you take that one and put that in your column as well. So again, I'm not tremendously excited about this, but I think when you balance all of the factors, really what the chairwoman has said, that I could vote to support this.
Yeah, I find your arguments persuasive, Sarah, even though I'm reluctant.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am persuaded, Bruce, I guess I'm still persuaded.
Don't give him a unanimous vote now. We
No,
don't
no,
want to-
All right, so I am going.
Somebody's got to go down.
Yeah, we
You
don't
can
know.
vote no now, Rosie,
So I am gonna make the motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, and we'll start with Rosie.
I vote to approve.
And I vote yes.
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 All righty, you will have your letter by the end of the week and no one can say you didn't work hard. for it.
That's right.
Right.
Well, listen, I
Okay.
appreciate it because this board, we've reasoned through this, I think, together. I think the decision is probably the right one. I understand always, because I work with a lot of different towns, a lot of different boards. I don't want to set a bad precedent. I'm sure the board doesn't, but this is a unique situation. I'm really happy at this result. I think, you guys are amazing, and thank you so much. Oh, and Sarah's amazing.
Thank you. Yes, Sarah
Thanks,
is
Sarah.
amazing. That's
Sarah
not
Key.
me.
Agree with that.
The off-camera Sarah.
Right. you- you-
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, and we are adjourned.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.